When we think of ancient Rome, we picture grand feasts, golden goblets of wine, and tables overflowing with roasted meats, exotic fruits, and honey-soaked desserts. But here's the truth. 99% of Romans never ate like that. The majority of people in Rome were peasants, farmers, and laborers, living tough lives and surviving on the simplest foods. They had no sugar, no processed food, and barely any meat, yet their diet was surprisingly healthy, nutritious, and even better than what most of us eat today. So what exactly did a Roman peasant eat every day? How did they cook their meals? And could you survive on their diet? Let's take a deep dive into the real food of ancient Rome and find out. Forget the feasts, the harsh reality of peasant life. If you were a Roman peasant, your days were long and exhausting. You'd wake up before sunrise, work in the fields or as a laborer, and return home at sunset. There were no supermarkets, no fast food, and no refrigerators. Everything you ate had to be fresh, seasonal, and simple. While the rich feasted on exotic meats, fine wines, and spices from across the empire, ordinary Romans had to make do with whatever was cheap and available. Their meals were mostly made up of grains, vegetables, legumes, and a few simple dairy products. Meat? That was a luxury. Dessert? Forget about it. Now let's break down exactly what they ate every day. The foundation of their diet: bread, grains, and porridge. At the heart of every Roman peasant's diet was grain. It was the cheapest, most filling, and most important food source. Main foods made from grains. Bread. Most peasants ate hard, dense bread made from wheat, barley, or millet. It was nothing like today's soft, fluffy bread. Puls. Roman porridge. A thick dish made by boiling wheat or barley with water. It was like a heavy, unsweetened oatmeal. Flatbreads. Some peasants made simple flatbreads that didn't require yeast. How did they cook grains? Most peasants had no personal ovens, so they baked bread in shared village ovens. No fancy ingredients, just flour, water, and salt, if they could afford it. They often dipped hard bread into soups or olive oil to soften it. This was basic survival food, cheap, filling, and full of energy. But since peasants rarely ate meat, they needed more nutrients from other sources. Vegetables and legumes, the secret to their nutrition. Because meat was expensive, vegetables and legumes provided most of the vitamins and protein in a Roman peasant's diet. Common vegetables they ate: cabbage, easy to grow and packed with nutrients. Onions and garlic, added flavor to meals. Leeks and carrots, popular in soups. Turnips and radishes, cheap and filling. Legumes, beans and lentils. Lentils and chickpeas, a major protein source. Broad beans, often cooked into stews. These simple ingredients helped peasants stay strong and healthy, even without expensive food. How did they cook them? Boiled into soups and stews with olive oil and herbs. Roasted over open fires when fresh. Sometimes fermented or preserved to last longer. Fruits and nuts. The only sweetness they had: peasants had no sugar, no candy, and no cakes. Their only source of sweetness was fruit and honey. Common fruits they ate: apples and pears, stored easily for winter. Figs and grapes, dried for longer shelf life. Dates, imported but rare for peasants. Common nuts, walnuts and almonds, eaten raw or crushed into meals. Fruits were dried and stored for when food was scarce. Unlike today, where sugar is in everything, Roman peasants got their sweetness naturally. Dairy, cheese, and milk were peasant staples. Peasants couldn't afford expensive meats, so cheese and milk provided protein and fats. Goat's cheese and sheep's cheese, the most common types. Milk, rarely drunk fresh, it spoiled too quickly. Butter, almost never. Olive oil was used instead. Cheese was an easy-to-store food that gave peasants much-needed energy. Meat and fish, a rare luxury. For most peasants, meat was a treat, not an everyday food. When they did eat meat, it was usually salted pork or goat, only for festivals. Poultry, chicken, duck, goose, a special meal. Fish, more common for those near the coast, often dried or salted. Unlike the rich, who gorged on wild boar, exotic birds, and fresh seafood, peasants rarely had the chance to eat large portions of meat. Cooking and flavors, simple but tasty. Roman peasants didn't have access to exotic spices, refined sugar, or rich sauces, but they still found ways to make their food flavorful. Their meals were simple, natural, and made with whatever was available. Common seasonings and flavors. Peasants relied on basic, affordable ingredients to enhance their food. Olive oil, used instead of butter to add richness. Garlic and onions, essential for stews and porridges, adding strong flavor. Coriander, cumin, oregano, the most common spices, though used sparingly. Vinegar, sometimes added to stews or vegetables for extra taste. How did they cook? With no modern kitchens, peasants had to cook using simple methods. Boiling, the most common method, used for stews, soups, and porridges. Roasting, used for vegetables and, on rare occasions, small pieces of meat. Baking, bread was made in large communal ovens shared by villages. Even with limited ingredients, they created hearty, filling, and nutritious meals that provided energy for long days of labor. Cooking was about practicality, not luxury, but their food was still satisfying. What did a Roman peasant eat in a day? Unlike the lavish feasts of emperors, a Roman peasant's daily meals were simple, filling, and based on whatever was available. Their food was meant to fuel their hard labor, not for indulgence. Breakfast? Ientaculum. Peasants started the day with a small but energizing meal. Bread, usually coarse and dense, made from barley or wheat. Cheese, often goat or sheep cheese, as cow's milk was less common. Olives or dried fruit like figs or grapes for a bit of natural sweetness. Sometimes they ate puls, a grain porridge if they had extra supplies. Lunch, prandium, a light midday meal, often eaten quickly, bread with vegetables like onions or garlic. Nuts or legumes for extra protein. If lucky, they might have a small portion of dried fish or eggs. Dinner, cena, the main meal. After a long day of work, dinner was the most important meal. A hearty stew made of grains, beans, and vegetables. Bread on the side to scoop up the stew. If available, a small serving of fruit or nuts as dessert. It wasn't fancy, but it was nutritious, balanced, and enough to survive. Could you survive on a Roman peasant diet? At first glance, the Roman peasant diet might seem too simple, even boring. No sugar, no processed snacks, and barely any meat. Sounds tough, right? But surprisingly, their diet was incredibly healthy by today's standards. No processed food, everything was natural, freshly prepared, and free from artificial additives or preservatives. Unlike today's diets filled with processed sugars, refined flour, and unhealthy fats, the Roman diet was entirely whole food-based, high in fiber. Peasants ate tons of whole grains, legumes, and vegetables, all rich in fiber. This helped with digestion, kept them full longer, and maintained stable energy levels throughout their physically demanding days. Balanced nutrition. While they didn't eat large amounts of protein, they got a steady supply from lentils, chickpeas, cheese, and the occasional fish or eggs. Their diet also contained plenty of healthy fats from olive oil and nuts, natural sweetness. Instead of artificial sweeteners, they relied on fruits like figs, grapes, and apples. No sugary sodas, no candy, just pure, natural energy. In fact, many modern diets, like the Mediterranean diet, closely resemble what Roman peasants ate. Could you survive on this diet? Would you try it for a week? Let us know in the comments. Conclusion: a simple, healthy way of eating. Roman peasants ate to survive, not for pleasure, but their diet was natural, healthy, and sustainable. So would you try eating like a Roman peasant for a day? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more ancient history content.